to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Guns, self-defense, concealed carry. This is the Patriot Defense Podcast. From the war room in Idaho's high desert, here's your host, Todd Echols.
And we are back. It is Saturday afternoon, and I am tucked away in the war room somewhere in the high desert of southern Idaho. And joining me today is, what do I call you? To call you by your real name, or do you want the nickname?
I don't care.
We're going to say James, because I'm going to screw it up and call you James at some point along the way today. But you joined us again in the last show you were on, which I didn't do a podcast last weekend. I'm not good at this, I guess.
I missed it. I work at night sometimes, and I have to listen to that and the Forgotten American, and then y'all forget to put out the podcast.
Family, I guess. But the last show you were on, we broke down the shooting, the Buffalo, New York shooting. And today we had you back because you're really good at following the news. You're really good at all this stuff, and we are going to break down this whole Uvalde, Texas deal. But before we jump into that, we got to start off with our small talk. See, I just about screwed up there. Just about went right into it because we've been in here talking now for like 45 minutes and we're all fired up.
That's true. So I guess we can start off with SIG's new P320.
Oh,
in the 10 millimeter.
Did they call it what they call it, like the 10X or something?
The 10X, which is
the X series.
Yeah, it's almost an X series. You take a nice close look at the grip. If you look at the X compact, and you mated it with the like the X Legion frame. Mm-hmm. It's got the same type of contours and whatnot. It's slightly bit thinner.
I was going to say, what caught me is it was really looked thin. It kind of reminded me, without looking at the details, thinner, like maybe like the new M&P 10 mil.
Yeah, it was
thin. That's why'd they make it so thin?
I think because they were going off of the SIG P320 45 platform.
Because it's bigger and more robust.
They needed the frame or the space in the frame because the frame is slightly longer in those. But the grip on them overall from front to rear is significantly large. I think that's probably why the P320 and 45 is not a big seller.
Right.
Like the M17, M18, even their medium grip is manageable for most hands. You get to the large grip, and that's like the small level for the P320 45 version. So I'm thinking they took the success of the X frames,
right?
Which it's kind of it's almost Glock-esque with rounded corners, and a bit of a beaver tail. And then they took the success of that X frame that they did on the carry models or the smaller carry models, which is frankly is really really comfortable. Just didn't work for me because I have thick hands and short fingers, so I couldn't get my finger on the trigger in the right spot to shoot consistently. But I think they're marketing it towards the outdoors, and it's probably a good way to go.
It is. I mean, that's a good caliber for the outdoors. We've talked about it a bunch, and 10 millimeters intrigue me. I've yet to actually buy one, but it intrigues me, right? I don't know why. I've shot the Glock, their version of the 10 mil, their versions. I've shot the I haven't shot the Smith & Wesson yet. I've shot Springfield Armories, their XDM in the 10 mil, and I like that a lot. I'd choose that over the Glock any day of the week. And I've shot SIG also has a 1911 platform that was it the Scorpion or
the old Scorpion was in 10
mil, and it was nice. It's a 1911, but I mean it worked. It was okay. I'm anxious to get my hands on this. I want to see what this feels. I need someone I know, and I do know someone who's ordered the Smith & Wesson M&P 10 mil. So now I need to set one of my other buddies, I'm looking at you, to pick up the SIG P320 in the 10 because I need to compare them now.
That would have been a good thing maybe a month ago because I'm probably going to get out from under the P320s.
That's okay. I'm working on someone else to buy one anyway.
Hey, I'll help you push them. Yeah, I'm falling back into the metal frame guns, and
okay.
I'm even starting to look at 357 SIG just to try it out.
Years ago before I was actually into firearms, I went to my buddy. Went with my buddy. We went into what was West Addison Sporting Goods in Twin, and it's no longer there now. It's a smoke shop. But the Camo building.
No.
on the corner of Addison and Washington.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's a smoke shop. It used to be a sporting goods store, right? And I would go in there. We'd go in there on a lunch, and we were working, and he would like buy fishing stuff or hunting stuff. And I never had a handgun. I'd never shot a handgun. And I'm looking down, and there was a little, I forget what it was. It was a Smith & Wesson, and it was a little, it was shiny, it looked cool. I don't even know what model it was, but it was not a 10 mil, excuse me. It was a 357 SIG, and that always looked like the coolest little gun to me. And so I've never owned one, I've never shot one, but 357 SIG has always kind of rung true to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It was like one of those guns I saw before I was even into guns. I was like, that looks badass.
I just started recently looking at the caliber because of a firearms platform that I'm familiar with. I still kick myself for getting rid of the last one I had, and that was I had a 229 Legion. Absolutely love that gun, but as a gift, I gave my father a Dan Wesson CCO.
Yeah.
And I really wanted it back. So I ended up selling the 229 to get the cash to give him I think it was $1,000, and I traded him a gun also to get that Dan Wesson back. And I've kicked myself ever since. And then locally, I found a 229 Legion and a 9mm conversion upper that has really got me thinking. You can plink all day with 9mm.
Sure.
Even carry. I mean, it's a great carry round. I'm carrying one now. But 357 SIG has got some merits to it. Obviously, it doesn't reach 357 Magnum velocities, but when you're cooking that little 125 grain out of there at 1450, that's some significant overage above your standard 9mm.
Right.
You're even above a plus P plus, which 115 grain plus P plus can push it right up to 1400. But then you're shooting 115 grain and you're beating the living canards off your handgun. So it's not something you're going to train with a lot either, or hardly find. It's really hard to find plus B plus.
The few people that have come to taken my class, my permit class, I think I've had 3 or 4 of them, and they had 357 SIG and they loved them. It's fun to look for those cases, those little neck down little suckers. They're kind of cool. Yeah,
those would be pretty trippy. And, the funny part is, most people think that they are a neck down 40 S&W, and they're not.
Right.
They're actually a 10mm casing, and it's the internal in the 40 S&W and the 10mm are actually different. The case head is thicker on a 10mm so that you can run those overpressured rounds. So you can't neck down a 40 S&W and pressure up the 357 SIG and try to stuff it in there. You're going to blow the bottom of the casing out.
So this is closer to a 10mm.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Ballistics, if you're just looking at factory ammunition ballistics,
right,
they're pretty much on par with each other. I mean, the 10mm really pulls away by weight. Mm-hmm. You're getting that 125 and comparing it to a 155 in the same speed range. But when you get to the original 10mm loads, 357 SIG falls really short.
Right. Well, I mean, it's kind of somewhat close. It's probably kind of why I like 357 SIG. And I don't know. It's not 40. That's good enough. That's all I need. So now we've had the big names. We have the Glock. We've had the Smith & Wesson. We've got the Springfield Armory. And now we got SIG with the 10mm. That seems to be the new thing.
Yeah.
Everyone's coming out with new 10. Who else needs to come out with a new 10? Those are the 4 big ones.
I would like.
Who we missing?
I would like to see CZ do something with their 97 platform, because they got the CZ 97 and 45 ACP. The platform is already there. So why not just stretch it to a 10?
I am not laughing because you said CZ, because it just dawned in my head. I wonder if Taurus is going to come out with a 10mm. Do they have one?
I don't think they do, but I think if you get. Well, you got the P320 jumping into that market. You got the M&P jumping into that market. Glock has already been there, but Glock's downfall is the size of their grip. Taurus could pull it off.
You heard it here first. The Taurus G210.
The G210. No, they're going to have to designate it something else, or SIG's going to sue them, because you got the P210.
Oh, there you go. So we got, you said CZ. Who else? What about Canik? Canik hasn't ventured out of the 9mm market.
No, I don't think they're
need HK.
I don't think HK is going to go there either.
Well, they're kind of set with what they got.
I think so, and I think you got Canik and HK. Their major markets are not in the U.S. They're outside of the U.S. I mean, obviously HK's come in the U.S. and so does the Canik, but they're more of a NATO design, NATO use gun. 10 millimeter, I think, is kind of like really just in the U.S. You don't see it anywhere else. A lot like the 40 S&Ws stays in the U.S.
But they got a VP40.
They do. They do.
But I don't think I've ever actually seen one in the wild.
I don't think I've ever seen one either. And it's weird. It's rare to even see the M&P 40. Every now and then you'll see it, but you don't see it a lot. And the whole premise of that gun is that's what it was designed for.
People are too embarrassed to bring them out. Question. This has me thinking about calibers now. So HK, they have a whole different line, and they've got 45s and all everything, right? Wonder why they haven't brought out a VP 45 yet. Because, I mean, it would just be a 45 on the striker fired platform.
Well,
and it might as well finish off.
The VP does have a lot of little tiny plastic parts in it, so
maybe. I just was curious.
Not totally so it would hold on.
I was just curious because it seemed like it would finish out the, I guess, trifecta.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a good go-to. I mean, the ergonomics of like the P45, their new rendition of the US P45, where they took the ergos of the P30 and the P30L and they stepped it up into a 45. And really, the grip size of the frame, that the slide is obviously taller, thicker, and wider. But the ergos on the gun are pretty much the same. So, I mean, you could do that with a VP9.
I don't know. That thing would be big and heavy, though.
It would be pretty large, but I mean, everybody packed a USP forever, and that thing's, it's a tank, or the Mark 23, which is,
right.
Yeah, it might as well have a sling on it.
I wonder what HK is going to come up next for. That's just me thinking about HK and my HK. I'm kind of a fanboy a little bit.
Hey, HKs are good guns to be fanboys of.
They are. I'm just trying to think like what they have. I mean, what they would come out with next.
I would like to see
like a smaller one.
I would love to see them. Well, they've got the SK.
They've got the SK, but would they go smaller than that? I wonder. Are they?
I doubt it.
That's not really their thing.
No, they are.
They'll need to bring back the squeeze cocker.
The P7.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you know that the P7 actually failed miserably in the Army tests?
I don't freaking care. How cool would that be to have one?
That would be cool.
I tried to buy one a while back.
Yeah, they're like $3,000 now or $4,000.
I tried to buy one. I didn't pan out, obviously. But man, how cool would that be? Right? That
would definitely be cool. Just because bore axis is low. They're a gas impingement system.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty cool. Or is it gas delayed blowback? So the same thing the Desert Eagle runs off of.
As long as she goes bang when I pull the trigger. That's all. I want to hear that with the squeeze cocker.
Well, you know what else it has in common with your next most favorite gun?
What?
It's a fixed barrel like the High Point.
The High Point. So you did a lot of work on that. Explain what you did.
I did.
You got out the bacon bits.
Once I got through the bacon grease, and that was gross because I think I sent you the pictures of it.
Shit was green.
It was green
in there.
The bacon grease had found its way to turning into black mold almost.
I have posted all those pictures up on Facebook, and the spring was flat out green.
It was green. It was also in the gun backwards when I pulled it apart.
I never took it out.
Yeah, somebody put the guide rod was in the wrong direction.
That was me.
Oh,
it was me when I was jamming in the bacon.
Oh man. But it seemed to function in reverse, so I mean, it didn't seem to work. But.
So come see Todd for all your gunsmithing needs.
So
did it smell? Did it smell?
No. I think it was way past the rotting corpse smell.
Did you have to clean your tools?
No. I actually threw it in the dishwasher just to get it all out.
The tools or my gun?
The gun went in the dishwasher.
Oh, freaking yes. I needed that's the picture I needed.
I should have got it, but I took all the little parts off it, all the little springs out.
Covered it in Dawn soap.
No, we got the Tide Pods. I know the millennials were hungry, but I'm going to save them for that. Yeah, washed all that stuff out, got all the grease out of it. It was really bad.
It's awesome.
Ended up taking it down. And this is a very interesting gun. If you've never pulled...
It looked interesting.
If you've never pulled something like that apart, you realize that you have plastic parts holding metal parts together, and it is the most simplistic sear that I've ever seen. It has no guide rails. If you look in that sight, it does not have guide rails. It's essentially a pin that goes back behind the striker that holds everything together with the barrel. I've never seen that. It operates that way. I actually polished that part out to try to smooth the slide action out a little bit. It didn't work either.
We take a grinder to it and get some weight off of it.
Oh man, I don't know if you could grind the bumps out of that cast iron, because when I was doing the feed ramp on it, I had heard that there's huge issues with it feeding hollow points, and I wanted to be able to make that thing feed hollow points
since
for
it's
you.
my defensive gun and all.
Yeah, it's an ankle gun. See you walking around with a limp. We know why.
I wonder if that'll fix my shin splints.
You got to come out with one leg bigger than the other.
Probably.
But ended up polishing the ramp on it, and it had divots so deep in the ramp.
I saw those. Yeah,
I couldn't polish deep without removing, material.
Burning through the ramp.
Yeah. So I mean, it's glass smooth now. Feeds hollow points great. No jams, no nothing like that. Got rid of that stupid disconnect in it, so you can actually practice with its atrocious 6-pound trigger.
Yeah. It's sweet, baby, sweet now.
It breaks nice and clean, and then it's got 40 feet of sponge after it.
I tell you, I'm going to bring this up though. The High Point, I don't think it's High. Okay, so High Point has a Facebook page, okay, and then there's another Facebook page called High Point. And you'll see when you go on there, the funny one, I don't think is actually, not really High Point. They have the funniest freaking memes on that thing that you've ever seen in your life. It's something you're not going to see floating around Facebook. Do yourself a favor, if you're on Facebook, go find the new High Point memes page. Oh my gosh.
I'm going to check it out after this. I didn't know it had one.
I've been watching it for about 3 weeks. And I actually just had to get off of it because they put so much stuff out. Like, that was the only thing I was seeing on my feed. So I finally had to get away from them for a while. I'll probably go back, but phenomenal Facebook page. It's some pretty crude humor in there, but it's entertaining. Stuff that I probably wouldn't repost on Patriot Defense, but it's...
Oh, I'm going to send it to everybody.
Oh, you God, it was great, man. It is freaking great.
I hear there's a High Point fanboy club out there. You see them in the forums every now and then. Well, I just had a High Point. It's the greatest thing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, they're comparing High Points to God and doing all kinds of stuff on that. That Facebook page is phenomenal. Yeah, you'll love it.
Find the Chuck Norris meme on there; it'll be good.
Yeah. And then there's another page that I'm on. Now we're talking about Facebook pages. Choose whether or not you want to be on this page or not. It can get a little graphic, but it's what's it called? Things that an ATF agent would say. If you join that one, beware. I would not say much. I would just view stuff because I guarantee you.
Oh yeah, there's somebody watching.
I guarantee you, there's a lot of people watching that page. But my gosh, is that entertaining?
I'm gonna definitely check it out.
I'll send you links.
I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook. Their algorithm knows when I'm on the toilet, so it's all good.
So now I got to look this up and tell everyone what's it called. It sounds. It's called. Sounds like something an undercover ATF agent would say.
Nice.
It's a great page. It's a great page. So, and if you're over there and you see that, you'll probably see some of the stuff I recycle into Patriot Defense. So,
I wonder if they've got a coexistence page that says the stuff that the FBI agents will put you up to.
They might. They should.
Yeah, they got some really good stories as of late. So
yeah, so I tell you what, let's talk about why. Well, you can come on the show whenever you want, but I like it because you're a really good guy when it comes to this government and shooting type stuff, right? I mean, you're it's your thing, and you're in it, you follow it, you're on top of it, and you keep me informed most of the time. But last time you were here, we talked about the New York, the Buffalo, New York shooter.
Yeah.
And we laid it all out. And I had so many comments on that show. People saying that's the best episode I've heard in a while. That's the best information I've heard in a while. And I liked the way we laid it out because we laid it out as, sure, you can look at it. It was a shooting that happened and people died. That's not a good thing. That's sad. That's upsetting. It's, whatever. We're not making light of that. But why did this happen, right? And you can look at it, well, it's because this and this and this, or you can look at it from I hate to say conspiracy theory, because nothing is a conspiracy theory anymore, right? Stuff happens. There's stuff that I think that's happening out there that you don't want to believe is actually happening. And so we went through, you did a really good job of this. You went through and you pointed out all the odd things that would stop and make you go, right? Make you think, why would that happen? That was odd. Why did that happen? Where did he get his guns? Where did he get this? What, that kind of stuff. And so that's the kind of the approach we're going to take today on this Uvalde, Texas school shooting. And I said, again, we're not making light of it. So many people died.
No, not at all. And the loss of 19 children and the teachers that went on, there's absolutely nothing to make light of. In fact, the more, we'll cover it here, but the more we find out, the angrier we get.
Oh, sure.
And I think when we get into that story, and if you fast forward through podcasts to get to stuff, slow down, listen, because I think we need to be very cautious in our anger,
right,
and where it is directed moving forward. And, all I can say at this point is the start off point is the New York shooting. Mm-hmm. And it leads right into this, or at least. So, I mean, at this point, put your seat backs up and your tray tables in the upright position and double line your hat, because,
it's coming.
There's some stuff coming. And
what we're going to do is we're going to point out the stuff that we see. And this thing is changing hourly, right? Almost by the hour. I mean, there's new stuff coming out. And so we are going to tell you, or mainly you, you're going to tell everyone what we know, the facts. We're not going to make up anything or anything like that. We're going to say the facts. And then we're going to say, but let's step back and look, and let's say how they could possibly correlate. Let's look at a bigger picture of possibilities. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think we should jump off right there at the New York shooting, right? Because
go for it.
We know that there's still information trickling out about this obviously racist goofball. Mm-hmm. But there's a commonality in the two, and it's very interesting, this, and I think it also is going to tie back into what we originally theorized in that last podcast about what their end goals might be, right? We knew universal background checks. We knew the 21 and over thing was going to come up. You can't buy a firearm until you're 21.
Right.
Kind of theorized about where they'll go with social media and that. And I think part of this might go into that pre-crime type stuff with what the state attorney general of New York is talking about. So we know the New York shooter had been on Discord and Twitch and a few other social media sites. And there were several people that were in those chat rooms with him that were basically reverberating his racism and his just crazy theologies.
They're all feeding off of each other.
Yeah. I mean, they're chatting this up and that. And the most disturbing portion of that was that they're, at least as the reports go, and I live in the conspiracy theory world, so I mean, this guy could just be a mole to get thrown under the bus, a retired FBI agent. Right. Mm-hmm. So do we have FBI agents that could be racist? That could be these sorts of things in there. There could also be plants, as we saw in was it North or South Dakota, where all those guys that were supposed to have a plan to kidnap the governor, all that stuff was thrown out of court. Right. And they were all adjudicated because it was set up by the FBI.
It was set up. Right.
So is this that, or is it just there is a agent that is, or a former agent that's this bad of an individual? We don't know, right?
But we do know, though, for a fact, though, that they had been speaking with, it just came out, it actually came out like in the Washington Post the other day, I think is what it was, that they were trying to figure out what was said, but the shooter had been contacted or been contacting or having a dialogue with a retired FBI agent
who lives in Texas.
And the New York shooter was so take that as you must, but go on. You're going to help draw some lines here.
So, we'll find out more about the New York shooter and that sort of thing. And I really think that this guy was a nutball. Was he triggered off? We don't know, right? But the one thing we're now finding out is that this Discord site and the conversation with the New York shooter was also a site that the Texas shooter was on, the same Discord threads. And there was a countdown set up of 13 days. And the initial day was when the New York shooter went off and did his thing. The countdown started 13 days until this one went off.
So when you say a countdown, I'm just some clarification as much as you know. So like on this Discord, there's a countdown, like they made an agreement, like he's going to do this, and then within so many days, this other one needs to take place. Is that what you're saying? Or, I mean, what is this? What do you mean by countdown?
So they essentially, in the posting, or at least what I could read in the posting, because a lot of it has been taken down and a lot of it is being probably entered as evidence somewhere. So they're trying to keep that secluded. But what we could get for screenshots and whatnot was essentially, next event, 13 days. And then it would drop 12, 11 as they went down.
Gotcha.
Now, I don't think really anybody knew what that meant until you start putting Discord together with the Texas FBI guy,
right,
and this nutty kid down here that shot these folks down, or these kids down in the school. So is there a tie there? I don't know, but it is an interesting question to ask, right? It's, are these lone shooters, these guys that have clear mental defunct issues, are they being driven? Are they being groomed by individuals on these social media sites, right? We do know, and this is real conspiracy theory level.
Well, I'm going to jump in.
MK Ultra.
I was just going to say that, right? Yeah. I was going to say, you got this whole MK Ultra thing. You don't know what that is. Look it up, right? I mean, it's where the government did, they would control people with drugs and get them all crazy. And am I? Yeah,
is drugs, visual acuity stuff. I mean, there was even a patent back in the 50s on wavelength that could be, the wavelength is projected through television and radio waves and that sort of thing.
And it works on broken individuals, especially. Well, they break you down, right? That's what they do. And so think about this. You take someone, and like I said, this is conspiracy side of it. You take someone like this guy in Texas, and or even this guy in New York, but I'm going to look at this guy in Texas. We seem to know more about this shooter than we do that guy in New York. I've heard more anyhow. So you look at someone who was already broken, who was in a bad place, right? And then they take these broken people and they're easier to mold, right? They're easier. I would think they're easier to mold. They're easier to convince. And why are they broken down? Well, it came out, whether it's true or not. His dad said that the kid had been real upset, like his social structure had been torn apart and broke down by the COVID lockdowns and all this stuff. So you have your government who is locking you down due to COVID, breaking you down mentally, destroying you financially, whatever it is, ruining your life, especially these youth, because we already know that because of the lockdowns and everything like that, depression and suicides are through the roof. So they're able to they've created these broken individuals, and they forced everyone on to social media or onto the computer now, right? And they did Zoom stuff, and now you got Discord and all this other stuff. Where do people go when they were locked down? They went to their computers and their devices, and then they can reach them. And why couldn't they do MK Ultra type stuff to someone to get what they want? Was I going too far there? No. And
I mean, maybe it's not. You don't even have to tie somebody down to do that. I mean, if you have somebody that has a flawed ideology, and let's talk about the Texas shooter. We know from his past. His high school contacts, he was a lone guy, right? He was a guy that went around and attempted to pick on people, and it failed. He was the guy that really didn't have a lot of friends. He was already isolated socially. And then you have his last years of high school, COVID comes in, he's isolated even more. From what I understand, the reports are, and I could be incorrect, so don't sue me on this. He grew up in a broken home. His dad was supposedly the better side of it, but his mother was drug addicted and abused him. That's why he was living with his grandparents. So he's already broken and isolated. I believe you mentioned something about his nickname, which I didn't know.
But coming out now that his nickname was School Shooter.
Yeah, and that, I mean, those are some red flags that some folks should be talking about. But
and that wasn't a nickname around town necessarily. That was his nickname on these social media deals, on maybe the Discord or the Facebook or whatever he was using.
Yeah, see, now I didn't know that, and that may even actually tweak my theory a little bit.
I've heard that 3 times now.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I think if we go back to our last conversation on the last podcast, that end goal of social media control, particularly with Elon Musk's moves, right?
Yeah.
And they want the disinformation board to kind of oversee all this stuff and essentially control freedom of speech online. This would be a really good way for people just to hand over their liberties.
And you know what you haven't heard of since he's happened?
What's that?
The Elon Musk crap.
Oh, yeah. No, it's
Has
been
gone
dead silent.
for like a week and a half, 2 weeks now.
Well, I mean, once it came out that over half of Joe Biden's followers were all bot accounts and
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton the same. I mean, they don't have half the support they think they do, but they want you to believe that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they lost control of Twitter. They lost control of a big mouthpiece. If Twitter goes down, Facebook's going to go down because people are going to start looking into that.
Right.
I don't know I'm old, so I don't know all the social media stuff out there, but once those dominoes start to fall, it's going to go pretty badly for them. And I think if you just look at it from don't let a good crisis go to waste,
Right.
This would be a perfect opportunity for them to start mentioning that, just like the New York
To get stuff fired up.
Attorney General did. Hey, we need to look into this. And it brings us to the other point. They're looking at the Texas guy here and maybe 6 other people that he communicated with, including this FBI agent that was in Discord, or former FBI agent, and looking at charging them with crimes even though they weren't accomplice to it. They didn't supply anything. They didn't provide anything. They knew about it. So what was the big brother thing we talked about for years? It was always report on your neighbor. Get your kids to report on your
so they're going to make an example of them. And, so they're going to make an example of, like, they should have said something, red flag laws, right? I mean, they should have said that this guy's unstable. He's talking about doing this. We don't know if he will. Do I think they should have said something if they knew? Well, heck yeah. When it comes down to that, sure.
I would agree.
Are they required by law to say something? They're not.
No, and I think that's where the line is drawn for those of us who kind of live on the libertarian side. Is a good man, a good woman, we're going to report the nut jobs, right?
Well,
Some
sure.
dude says he's going to go out and start smoking kids. It's like, my very next call is FBI, ATF, or the local agency is down. Hey,
Right.
man, I've got print, I got text that says this. You need to go see this guy.
But then again, if you're a supposed, and air quotes, retired FBI agent, and you're in there chit-chatting with this guy, and you want this to take place, you're not going to say anything.
Yeah, and I think
You're gonna feed into it.
think that is a solid point to get off of. So is this guy's name in there because they need to throw somebody under the bus?
Right.
And it just leads up to that, and you don't know who to trust? Or is this guy, was he put there to help mold that shooter?
Yeah.
To encourage this guy popping off the nut. I mean, we know that the ATF had visited his house, or the FBI had visited his house, the shooter's house, twice before the incident.
That with the Texas shooter.
The Texas shooter.
Okay, now I saw that, but tell me, 'cause that's all I've heard about it. Why were they there? What were they looking at? What was going on?
Online threats.
Online threats.
Online
okay.
threats, and now like, hey, somebody turned this guy in, so they're going to go meet with him.
Gotcha.
Or at least that's what the report says. But at this point, what can you trust in the reporting?
They were
right?
checking on their subject.
It could very well happen.
They had to drop those Daniel defense rifles off at some point.
Yeah, thinking, how do you, that's $2,000 and one weapon. And I think there's another interesting point on that, right? There.
Well, yeah.
The media is pushing real hard about he ordered those guns over the internet. And what do they want to do? Chucky Schumer wants to stop internet purchases.
Right.
He doesn't bother to mention that you can't just internet purchase and ship it to your house. It has to go to an FFL,
Right.
Where you have to go to the 4473 and you have to do all the steps that you need to do to get it.
Mm-hmm.
So if the kid made it through all those steps and the New York shooter made it through all those steps, why the push for a universal background check? It didn't do anything because he had to go through that background
Right.
check in order to get that. And he had contact already with the FBI, who could have reported him to Nix and said, hey.
Or he should have been flagged somehow.
Yeah, exactly. Said, hey,
Yeah.
this guy's making school threats. We don't have any evidence, but maybe we ought to put a hold on him for a little bit and let's watch and find out what happens. Is he going to go nuts, But none of those things happen, and it leads right down to Tin Hatville.
It does. It does. It leads to the point of, well, this guy's kind of primed. Let's see what else we can do here.
Exactly.
And so here's a thought. I just have random thoughts. You just have to you just bear with me. And nothing against Daniel defense or anything like that. Is there a reason why that you think maybe if it was what we thought happened and he was handed, he was given himself, is there a reason why he was handed like really expensive like Daniel defense rifles? Is there a reason with that? So there's a reason for everything. Is there a reason for that? Does that play? Do you?
I don't know, but I don't know anything about it. But just tickling the back of my brain, I believe Daniel's Defense has a contract with the federal government for, rack grade rifles.
Okay. See, I'm just
so it'd be a really easy way to just, hey, let's take this one off the shelf.
There's little spider webs that go everywhere, right? I mean, so
and it could even be a firearms or a shop purchase, and
sure,
I'm a gear guy, right? I'm looking at, I want the best stuff.
The guy can barely afford to pay his phone bill.
Yeah, working at Subway, barely making nothing. If he planned it over years and years, maybe he could have saved up that much. I don't know. But it seems really odd that a couple of days before his shooting stuff goes off, he comes up with $2,000 plus orders to get this weapon. 1,700 rounds, which we know ammo right now, for a 1,000-round case of 5.56 is what, $700?
Yeah.
So a $2,000 rifle, $700 at minimum of $700 in ammunition, magazines to go with it. They're like $12 to $15 a piece.
Tons of magazines.
Exactly. So even the D&H mags, which are contract, lower cost mags, are going to run you $11 to $12 a piece. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right there. And plus, who packs in 1,700 rounds? I mean, even your average loadout of your guy is your combat vet's not going to be that.
I saw a video that actually broke down like the whole scene and like where he dropped like the rounds that were found on him, the rounds that he shot, the rounds they found dropped outside, the rounds and magazines, and it was just a staggering amount.
Yeah,
it's like, what's this kid packing all this around for? But then we get into the interesting. I mean,
well, even in that wasn't nervous officers that didn't want to get shot at that was dropping their stuff on the way into the building.
Yeah, and so
I ain't got no bullets. It's all outside.
So there's all kinds of weird stuff. So let's take from when he was disturbed. He turned 18, supposedly got the rifles then, and what happened after that? So he got into. I mean, if I'm jumping ahead, like you've I've just picked up the story of how he got the rifles. I've only been looking at that for about a day, so I haven't dug too deep into it. But it doesn't make sense, you know, the amount of ammunition, the amount of magazines, and $2,000 rifles just showing up on a line of credit that he didn't have backing for. I mean, unless his dad got him a credit card or something like that, or maybe the COVID spread around funds just got slipped into the ATF's additional, our backdoor deposit. They spread them around. Yeah.
Here's your what is it? The EBT card.
Yeah.
You can use this on Daniel's Defense site now. But I mean, there's a lot of theories that can come in that, and hopefully we find out some information that isn't disinformation. It's certainly not going to come from mainstream news. We're going to have to watch back channel news to see exactly what's going on and where. And maybe some patriots that are still within our workings of our departments trying to do the right thing, letting this information out.
Right.
But we'll see how that comes out. But where I picked it up just recently is, finding the details of the shoot.
Right. Well, he left his grandma's house. Can we start there?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a timeline, right?
Yeah.
So he got in an argument with his grandma and shot her.
Shot her.
In the face.
Yep.
She's not dead. She's not. She's still alive.
I was not aware of that part.
Yeah, she is still alive. I saw an article actually this morning, and she was like sitting on her front porch, like with her freaking rosary or something. I don't know.
Holy cow.
I mean, but or maybe that was an old picture, but she's still alive. She's not dead, and she wasn't talking. I don't know. God, there's stuff that comes out. You and me are constantly texting back and forth. Did you hear this? Did you see that? Did you see that? It's changing all the time. But anyhow, got in an argument with her, shot her, left,
drove down the street, had an accident.
Yeah.
Grabs his gear and runs to the school.
But law enforcement confronted him near the accident, didn't they?
That I don't know. I heard the initial story I heard is they were chasing him, but I haven't been able to verify that.
He shot people. I heard that he was shooting as he was heading to the school too.
Yes. Yeah, he was putting rounds in various locations. I don't think he was aiming at anybody particular, but he was shooting around as he was searching for entry into the school.
And he was walked to the school with a rifle, a backpack, and a rifle slung over his shoulder.
Yep.
And he was able to get to the school.
Which was find an unlocked door.
So the school. So if you know that's happening near school, what do? You lock the damn school down.
It's a full-on lockdown. From what I understood, and I'm not totally certain on this yet, I can't tell from the reports whether it was the class. He only entered one classroom, from what I understand.
Right.
And the only reason he went into that one classroom is that teacher propped the door, or somebody had propped the door with a chair. Now, I don't know if that was the entry door, because it's been kind of foggy, getting a lot of information.
Right.
My brain's not lined up, but you guys go out. You're smart enough. Anybody listening to this is smart enough to go out, do the research, find the stories, start blending them together to figure out what the truth is. But one of those doors was propped open, or just left unlocked, which is strange. I mean, he has to get into the facility before he can get into a singular classroom.
Right.
He gets into the facility, gets into the classroom, and I'm going to go off the premise that he gets into the classroom because there was a door propped open. The rest of the school is supposedly locked down, which, I mean, if they have any level of basic training, they're probably doing that. It's good to go, right? Mm-hmm. He gets in there and he starts shooting up the kids. From the initial story, the very first stories we get,
right,
is that he was law enforcement had engaged him within 3 minutes of the shooting starting. We know that didn't happen. We know that he was outside of the facility shooting for 12 minutes before he entered the building.
And one of the first stories we heard was that the RSO officer, shot at him, made him drop his bag full of magazines.
Yep.
And then he went into the school. But we find out later that the resource officer wasn't even there.
There was no RSO. And as far as the history on the school goes, at least the last information I read on it, they've never had an RSO. So it's like, why would you put that information out there?
Why would you say that?
And I know sometimes in the heat of the moment, information gets mixed up. So maybe that's a spoof for somebody maybe these officers that patrol the area because there's a school in the area. Mm-hmm. Do they call them RSOs? I don't know. But it's just an oddity, right? And when you start adding up the oddities, any good officer will tell you, or any lawyer will tell you, when your story starts consistently changing, you're lying. There's something.
You're hiding. Yeah,
you're hiding something. You're over-explaining yourself. There's always something behind what you're saying. Sometimes it is in the moment. I mean, it's part of the training that you do here. The stuff that I've been through before is when an after incident, hey, I want to help you as much as I can right now, but I'd like to speak to an attorney. You need that time to detune and think things out, because if you say the wrong things, the officer is just writing down exactly what you say.
Right.
They're not there to judge you or anything like that. That goes to the prosecutor, and whatever you say can be used against you in a court of law, right?
Right.
So maybe there's misreporting. Maybe there is just an accidental, hey, we kind of screwed this up because it was all excitement and stuff. However, there are some things that go along with that we're now getting with on the scene, that things were going much slower, and It wasn't that quite of an exciting thing. We're finding out that officers had entered the facility after he had gone in, 3 minutes after he had gone in.
But real quick, it's the point I want to make. I wasn't there. I don't know about the officers. I don't know exactly what went down. 12 minutes.
12 minutes.
He was outside of the school, and it's not like he just snuck up there real quietly. He was random shooting, whatever. He was shooting.
Yeah, and they have it on video. 12
minutes. I don't understand how you can be outside the school for 12 minutes and have officers that were already knew kind of where you were headed and what you were doing, obviously, and you not get shot. You not get stopped, okay? I wasn't there, but...
And we, in all honesty, I don't know the geography of the area.
Well, sure.
I know, like, out here, living in Twin Falls, their law enforcement's a lot closer. If I were out in the county, if I'm between Hollister and Jackpot or something, it may be some serious time before you get a county response.
This was in the town.
That's true. It is in the town, and I don't know what the officers were doing. So
Okay, so back to the school.
but ultimately,
3 minutes.
the reports, the police make entry 3 minutes after he makes entry.
Okay.
They engage him. He engages them back. And there's a report. There are 19 officers in the facility by this time, just meandering the corridor that he is not in. He's hunkered down. He's got himself barricaded up, and he's, in his mind, he's ready for a fight. They exit the building because some commander, and I'm sure this will come out, we'll find out who it is, said, "Hey, we might get shot."
I think they already came out with it. I don't have the guy's name, though. But he actually came out and said, I made the wrong choice.
Clearly.
Yeah, I made the wrong choice.
But he made a whole lot of wrong choices that string, because they go back out to the parking lot. Officers are out there. They're securing the area. Parents are now arriving. They've heard about the shooting. They know what's going on with their kids. This is where it gets kind of weird, and I'll explain the conspiracy theory on this after I get the information out, right? The officers are out there, not all in TAC gear, but the story is they're waiting for a special tactical team to try to avoid having, additional casualties and stuff like that.
He is barricaded in a room shooting people.
Exactly.
And here's my thoughts, and this is going to sound horrific, but I wasn't there, but this is in my brain. It's like, did he walk in and really quick just dispatch all 20 people or whatever it was total that died? Is that what he did right away? Or why they were waiting outside while the parents were out there, why law enforcement was outside and they wouldn't go in? Was he just in there? They heard him just picking people off in there?
So unfortunately, I watched the interview with one of the children that was in the classroom.
Yes.
And it was a terrible scene. He did not just gun them down. He was picking them off.
Yeah, and so
slowly.
I read an article. One girl in there, one of the children that survived, she's just going to be scarred for absolutely forever. She said her friend got shot next to her, and she didn't know what to do, and she reached over and grabbed handfuls of blood off of her friend, smeared it all over herself, and laid there and tried not to move so she wouldn't get shot. So he would think that she was already dead.
I did not hear that story. That is terrible. That's far worse than what I heard.
That is absolutely terrible. And so can you imagine? So the parents are out there. Maybe I jumped ahead a little bit. The parents are outside. The law enforcement is outside, and he's in there systematically taking lives, shooting kids, shooting babies. How horrific is that? And yet the law enforcement is just out there. They won't go in. And another thing that maybe I'm going to jump ahead, maybe because I'm not sure where you're going with this. And we talked about this. It's crazy. I saw a video, I think it was this morning, of a guy talking about it. And I read an article on it as well, where at one point, I don't know where, law enforcement, when they were in the school, they knocked on the door and they said, "Is anybody in there?"
And the girl responded. And
one of the kids responded. And as soon as she responded, the guy shot her.
Yeah, guy found her and executed her.
Part of the training for law enforcement and for the kids, right? You don't respond. You don't know who's outside the door, right? If you have to barricade yourself in a classroom, you don't respond to anybody or anyone that knocks the door. Why would law enforcement ask that? Why? I'm not saying it was done on purpose, if it was just a lack of training, but why would they do that? Why would they risk it? They should know better. They're the freaking law enforcement.
Well,
I'd expect the kid to screw up, which the kid did, but they're just babies. I
don't know what their personal department policy is, but I know that nationwide policy dictates the officer on scene goes directly to engage, they're not to search anybody out. They're not to stop and place tourniquets. They're not to bandage or help anybody. Their number one goal is to engage and drop the threat. Then you go back and you take care of what you can.
Yeah.
And while you're slipping around, knocking on stuff, and it makes no sense. And there's zero sense in it.
And I've been told, by law enforcement that, hey, look, when we go to a school shooting, it's we're hot, we're ready, weapons locked and loaded, and we will step over people bleeding out in the hallways until we eliminate the threat, eliminate the shooter, because until we do, he's just going to be shooting more and more and more people.
Yep.
We will come back for the wounded or come back for the people who are bleeding out once we eliminate the threat. That's our job. And I don't know if I like this term, but they're hunting at that point, right?
Yeah. You essentially need to. Yeah. You need to stop the killing before you can save more lives.
And this didn't happen there. They didn't
clearly not.
They walked in. From everything I have read, they walked in and someone said, "Well, are they afraid of getting shot?" And then they turned around and walked back out again. So much that the parents were causing a huge uproar. And I'll let you pick up.
Not only did they walk out, they turned their weapons on the parents. They arrested, detained, physically assaulted parents that were trying to get in. And this is one of the interesting rescue stories out of it. Once they released one of the women,
the moms,
one of the moms, from their cuffs, she told the cops to fly a flagpole. She went over the fence and extracted her daughter.
Yeah, not from the classroom, from the school.
From the school, but she went in and got her daughter out of there.
Yeah,
unarmed.
She was willing to do that.
Nobody knew whether the shooter was down. Nobody knew whether he was being engaged or whether he was still killing people. That mom went in there. She had bigger brass coconuts than any one of those officers standing outside there staring in. The other positive we get out of this is the initial information we had was that they stepped back outside to wait for the Border Patrol tactical team, a tactical entry team. Mm-hmm. And then Border Patrol showed up. Well, a Border Patrol agent showed up because his children were in that school.
His wife called him to let him know what was happening.
Yep.
And he was getting his hair cut at the barber
Getting his
shop.
hair cut, did not have his weapon, asked the barber for his shotgun, and went to the school and engaged the shooter.
And took him out.
I don't know if it was him that took it out. We don't have any definitive evidence on that yet.
I jumped ahead, sorry.
But we do know that he went in and he engaged that POS.
I think.
Right?
Yeah, okay.
So, talk about civilian gun ownership. If you ain't got one on you, it doesn't do you any good.
Right.
And, boy, he had one right there and had the knowledge to go down and get his children. And then all of a sudden, bang, everybody's released and law enforcement goes in this case made a great show of it. What threw caution to the wind to me early on was how much admonishment the media had been laying out on all of the officers involved, the investigative team and all this sort of stuff prior to the information that we have now. Then we just divulged that they were standing outside,
right,
turning their weapons and training on parents that were unarmed, clearly.
Tasing them, pepper spraying them, all kinds of stuff.
Pepper spray, detaining one guy. He ended up getting beat up.
Yeah.
Because he was going to fight to get his wife past them.
Right.
Which I think any self-respecting dude with a pair of nuts is going to do. Mm-hmm. But that's after the fact. Where the initial stories we're getting is how great the responders were and everybody's kissing their butt.
They let the kids die.
They were letting them die, but we didn't know this in those initial reports.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm always skeptical of a news media that is laying admonishment super thick on top of law enforcement that they just spent the last year, taking a leak down their back, how cops are racist and they're murderers, and the Border Patrol guys were whipping people coming across the border illegally, and all the baloney that, the fake news, let's just call it fake news that came out about it. And so we're at that point in that information. It's like, well, there's something wrong with this story. And now we're finding the other side of the story. Now here comes the conspiracy tin hat portion of it. The right and left, gunners, anti-gunners, we've been at each other forever. We always try to find middle ground at some point, right?
Yeah. So we're trying to find reasons for this, reasons why all this stuff happened and how things work together. That's what we're trying to do right now. Yeah. You and me. These are our ideas, or your ideas, but I agree. Ideas, possibilities, and you make some good points. Okay.
And I think we have had no agreement on a lot of things for a long time between the anti-gunners and the gunners. I'll just make that simple term, right? We on the pro-gun side, we know what the anti-gunners are going to say. We know what they're going to push for. The anti-gunners know exactly what we're going to say for the vast majority of the time, what we're going to push for. This idea that I have, that this underlying media, did they go out there and praise the police on the front of this story, knowing the premise behind, all the mistakes that had happened, that these people were kept outside, that this guy was allowed to do what he was doing. The initial report said 90 minutes. I think it's more around like 45, 50 minutes that they were out there. I think the whole event was a 90-minute event.
Right.
Just to at the underpin get the right and the left talking about, hey, the left is going, hey, we've always hated the police and we told you they suck. And now the right is going, well, yeah, they obviously suck. They didn't do what they were supposed to do. And now we go back to Barack Obama's plan in 2012 of federalizing the police. Unlike some Americans, I have a pretty long-term memory when it comes to this. I stay focused on Second Amendment stuff. So I can remember all the way back when there was Al Sharpton, all the lefties, Pelosi, everybody standing out there going, we need to federalize the police. The one guy that comes in to save the day is a federal cop. Every other local jurisdiction officer that was involved in it, they were a miserable failure because of whatever orders or something. And this is just the way it's being portrayed.
Sure.
Or what actually happened, right? I mean, this is where it is. And so now we start coming to this level of agreement, right? We're not going to agree on the gun thing, right? It's, I'm not going to turn in my firearms and they're not going to give up trying to take them.
Right.
It's just, that's the way it's going to be between us and them for the longest time. I think some of that is turning. We're starting to see folks that are center left realizing the importance of being able to take care of yourself, starting to see things where, hey, we might have to take care of ourselves against tyrannical forces. But the way left is never going to see it that way. And the way right is never going to see it towards the middle. But if you can get agreement on local cops aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're not getting the official training and stuff that they need, and it requires federal agencies and federal oversight and more federal government power. What a sweet way to throw it out there. Sacrifice 19 children to try to get the gun control moving a little more, getting everybody to the right to start moving to the left, going, we don't like cops and they all suck. We should federalize it.
Yeah, and
that's my theory.
Well, and you know what? You think so? It's a theory, but think about stuff that's happened just in even the last this year so far, right? I mean, the fact that they have designated, I think it was in the omnibus spending bill. Was that the one where they put money toward local sheriff's departments? Oh no, they actually put money to the ATF. Yeah, it was omnibus spending, but to the ATF. They give it to the ATF. They can go to the states and actually, I don't know if deputize is the right word, or create ATF agents, federalize these sheriff's deputies into ATF agents if they have to. Yes. And everyone's been asking why? What are they doing? What do they want? Well, if your theory is correct, that makes sense now. Yeah, I think there's another piece, too, that should be mentioned. Anybody that's dealt or bought firearms for a long time knows what the old 4473 looked like, what it is. They changed it last year. They removed all the information that was on the back page to the front page. That's the pertinent information about the firearm, the address that the person who's purchasing it is, and their signature. As of recently, we know that Gun Owners of America have won their lawsuit against the ATF. Okay, explain what that lawsuit was. So the lawsuit was basically a Freedom of Information Act trying to get the information out that the ATF is holding a federal registry on firearms, or federal record on all firearms. The traditional standard was that each FFL held those 4473s for 20 years, and then they could throw those away. That the federal government was not allowed to hold those, right? So there was no legal registry. And a few years back, I actually remember about 10 years ago, is when they started digitalizing that 4473. You go in and you punch your finger in and you put all your information on a screen rather than writing it down. Yeah. The ATF and local law enforcement can come in at any time without warrant for any reason and just go through your 4473s. Sure. When I was in Washington State, there was a small dealership or an FFL down in town, Tacoma,
where the ATF would come in there, and for about 3 weeks straight, they were coming in and taking pictures of all of the 4473s that were on paper. Everything they had got a photograph of it, and it was high res.
All digitized.
iPhones, all digitized. The lawsuit with GOA was releasing the information that the ATF was scanning all of the 4473s into a database. Now, the trick to it was they were saying it was not a searchable database, so it was legal for them to do that. They couldn't actually just search it by name, and they couldn't search it by serial number. What they did find out is what software was being used for that, and what were the safeguards that they were supposed to be able to say, hey, the ATF is acting in a legal capacity to do this. What they found is they had over-the-counter software that when they scan the 4473, the handwritten documents into it, it reads the handwriting and turns it to the digital format. So, you write a cursive A and it turns it into a standard A. You have this function on your iPhone. I mean, essentially, you can translate other languages on Google search from just typing in those things. It'll show it up to you.
Right.
So the ATFs, they said, yeah, that's what we're doing, and we use this software here to do that. And then they asked, well, in that Freedom of Information Act was, well, how do you ensure that it's not a searchable feature? They open the settings screen and click the box that says not searchable. That is their fail-safe. So at any other point, they could go open the settings and click the box that says searchable any point, because it's not a blocked out forever feature. It's just it's turned off while they're doing what they're doing.
Whenever they want to use it.
Turn it on anytime they want.
So I always bring this up. I bring this up to everyone, right? I mean, even in my permit classes, right? I'm not picking on the officer at all. He just knows what he knows, right? But he goes, oh, there's no federal. I was like, you know what? There isn't really, but everything has gone electronic. Everything has gone to the iPad or whatever, right? You don't fill out freaking papers anymore.
Yeah.
And I said, when I hit, my big question was, when I hit done, when I sign my name and click send, where does all that go?
To Nick's.
Yeah. But he's like, well, no, it's really not. And I'm like, I don't trust the government on this. There's something in place, right? There has to be. Oh, no. And he argue. He doesn't know. He knows as well as I do. But freaking I was right.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's the thing. If they can pull up text messages or searches that you've done online that you have deleted off of your history from 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
You don't think they have the technology to pull up the 4473s? I mean, even in the old way. Right? Even with the hard forms, the 4473 itself in boxes stored at the FFL site or wherever their storage unit is, it's still a registry. All you got, it's kind of funny if you go back and you watch Red Dawn and the original Red Dawn.
Right.
And there's a translated section in there when I believe it's a Cuban officer is talking to somebody. He says there, the translated portion says, go to the local gun shops, pull the 4473s. It'll tell you where the firearms and what type of firearms it is. It's in one of the opening invasion scenes when they hit the town, right?
I think I remember that, yeah.
So, I mean, essentially, it's they really want to know. All they do, because they don't require a warrant to go in there. They don't require a reason. They can just come in, hey, I'm going to take all your boxes whenever I want.
Yeah.
So it was always there. It was just hard to get to. And now it's easy to get to. And I think there's a point, right? We know, being on the right and in favor of firearms,
right?
The left's push has been for federal universal background checks, right?
Right, yeah.
Which is, in short, 4473, right? For every firearms purchase there is, right? So from what I understand, and from my last reading from the GOA, they have 8.4 million records already of all recent purchases. They know where those firearms are, or where they were. They know each type of firearm, caliber, serial number, all that stuff. They know that of 8.4 million of the firearms. And it might even be like 80 million transactions. I think I remember reading that in the article too, that they have record of 80 million transactions. They don't know where the rest of the guns are. They need to know where the rest of the guns are. So if everybody goes, yeah, I need a universal background check, you give it 15, 20 years, maybe less, right? They'll know where they all are, right? And then there'll be a registry for every single one of them. That's the point of the universal background check. Because we know, we clearly know just with these 2 shooters alone, just these 2, that their background check didn't stop anything. Stops nothing.
Right.
I'm confused about is why the push for the 21 and older thing. That I don't have a theory on yet. It just doesn't make sense to me as to why you would push that. You could go, you can be 18 and go in the military and they can, give you a javelin missile and a switchblade and some grenades and fully automatic firearms and a tank, at 18 years old. And in the military, you can go die for your country or for whatever they want you to die for. If you need oil or resources from another country, it's for freedom. But they're too young to own a firearm here at home. They need to be 21, yet they want a 16-year-old to be able to vote or a 12-year-old to have an abortion without her parents' consent.
Well, maybe they view it as if we keep, they say, we should move the age to 21. That's what they're going to say, right? And then they're going to come in with something else. They're going to say, okay, well, let us do this, but we'll go ahead and keep that age to 8. It's like a bargaining chip, right? They want, something they could throw out there to say, let them have that, but we want this.
That's very possible, and I think what you're touching on here is that
Overton window.
The Overton window, right? We know Tuesday when Schumer comes back to session and brings the Senate back into session, they will be voting on this ridiculously extreme firearms proposal bill, right? It's a banning of AR-15s. It's you got to go get a special license from the Attorney General to make sure that you can own just one gun, and you need to have that license renewed. And there's a bunch of language I haven't had a chance to go through, but the basics are there, right? Mm-hmm. And then we look at the left, and they're constantly learning, right? They're constantly learning to get that one more inch down the field.
Yeah.
And I think they took a lot from Donald Trump's art of the deal on this, right? So they're going to throw this proposal out there. One, they know will never pass. They have 7 senators that are on the docket this coming this November. And more, I think 5 or 6 of them are in gun-friendly states. Mm-hmm. They're not going to vote for it, right? So you throw the biggest, most extreme thing you can get out there, and we know the Republicans are weak. We know that Mitch McConnell's a frog, and we also know that he's an anti-gunner. He doesn't care. So this gives him some leeway to move to the left, and he'll say, "Well, hey, if we can't compromise a little, maybe we can do this universal background check thing. Maybe we can do this 21 and older thing. Maybe we can compromise on something else like internet privacy. If you see something, say something kind of idea. But if you don't say something, we are going to, prosecute you."
They want compromise, right? And so what they do is, we call it the Overton window theory, or the one I've been using lately is the spaghetti theory, right? Take all these things that you want, anything, irrational stuff you won't get, throw some stuff that you think you'll get in there, throw it at the wall. Most of it's going to fall off. But the stuff that sticks, that's what they want.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? They just they disguise it, they hide it in there, and then all of a sudden you see this craziness, and you're like, I don't want that. Okay, well, you won't end up with that, but you're going to end up with this instead, and you're going to go, that was close.
Yeah. And
guess what? It happens all the freaking time, right? One of my biggest deals is I don't like the NRA. The NRA has slowly over the years, they were once good, I think, at one point, but slowly over the years, they have compromised away our rights. Little by little by little by little. We talk, I've talked with you about it. I talk about it on the podcast, on the radio show, whatever, about are they going to come and take our guns? Are they going to come to our houses? Honestly, I don't think they're going to go house to house and take guns. I think that's impossible. I think what they're going to do is they're going to take a little here, make it difficult here, do a little over here, a little over here, and pretty soon you don't have those rights. They've whittled away at them, or they've made it so freaking difficult, right, that no one wants to even try anymore. And that's the same way that they're doing here. That's the same way that the NRA does. Little by little, here we go. We got into my next favorite rant, right? Little by little, the NRA has given away your rights.
Yes.
And they do it slowly, and they do it purpose. I think it's on purpose, slowly over time. So all of a sudden you don't realize it's like the frog going into the pot of water. You throw him into the boiling water all at once, he's going to jump out. You put him in there and slowly turn it up a few degrees at a time, he's going to freaking die in there because he didn't see it coming. He got used to it.
Well, and I think there's a couple of things to that. I do think gun confiscation is coming.
Right.
And I think it is only because their agenda is not on track.
Right.
Right. There's some things that went awry when they did their COVID lockdowns and they hit the cities with riots. They expected people to run to the government, and some did. We need you to solve this problem. We're going to give away more of our security, or more of our freedoms for security,
for safety. Yeah.
And then a lot of those locales just turned a blind eye to them, and quite frankly, it was mainly because of race. Right? They turned like, no, we're not going to do anything. Those people realized that they had to fend for themselves. And we had 20 million new gun owners inside of a year and a half.
Yes.
So that was like, whoa, wait a minute. We did that the wrong way.
They've lost a lot of their voting block.
They did. They lost those people that were they were on the fence about, well, I don't really like guns and I don't really need one. And, we don't need this type of gun. And then the perfect storm comes, and they go, "Wait a minute, I need one of those." They're calling up the neighbor down the street. "Hey, you got an extra AR? I can,
Yeah, how come I can't have the shit delivered to my house?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there was a huge pushback against the agenda, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then of course they failed with the UN Small Arms Treaty twice. It's not going to get through. It's election year, and they're never going to get that through. Mm-hmm. They needed 2/3 vote in the Senate to ratify that. So we target the UN and the WHO, again, going back to the Obama era and his attorney general. No, not attorney general. What do you call that guy? The medical general, right?
Surgeon General.
The Surgeon General. And the Surgeon General identified guns as a public health crisis, right? So we look at the current language with the UN's WHO.
Yeah.
Public health epidemic or pandemic, right?
Yeah.
An epidemic is an epidemic of gun violence is what the news media likes to call it.
It's mass shootings. It's an epidemic.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So, and unfortunately, I've talked to some people just in the last couple of days via Facebook that, women that I know that carry, right?
Yeah.
They're not staunch hard Second Amendment people like me. They actually posted on there all in one of their giant emotional outbreaks, "I'm willing to turn in my guns and give it up if we can just stop these shootings from happening."
That's what they want you to do.
That's exactly right. The idea is to push you so far that, we're going to hand this off to you. And I was actually, some people I'm not amazed to see that from. These ladies I was, because unfortunately they've been in situations where they were, they were physically saved. They were physically assaulted.
Right.
They had been, in one case, she had been raped multiple times. And years ago, I got her on her journey of concealed carry. She used to work for me.
Uh-huh.
Her and her husband's a great guy. Unfortunately, I believe she lost him last year with COVID and stuff. And so she's on her own with her kids, and, she's carrying now. And this is the one that posts, "I'm willing to give them up if we can stop this." And it was like, you're right on that edge. You're right on that edge that they're going to push you over for that.
Uh-huh.
The rest of us are not going to allow that to happen. But boy, if you can get everybody closer to the middle, and then say, "Hey, we have a pandemic or a crisis," right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we now need the United Nations peacekeepers to come in, and there's riots going on. So we're going to send these peacekeepers in, and we're going to have them do this. There's already 2 million of them here in the United States as it is. 2 million UN peacekeepers, and I believe it's 6 different sites. The latest one just opened up in Arizona. They took over a federal building in Arizona. It's now sovereign territory of the United Nations. So I don't know. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's not it. I don't know. But confiscation is coming.
Yeah.
Because their agenda is off.
Well, it's interesting too, because people are starting to turn as well. I mean, and I was on TikTok today, and I've seen at least 2 or 3, and they're all kind of coming from the same. I'm not picking on ladies, right? But they were women, and they were these women. You want to call them like female huntresses, right? They like to hunt, and that's cool, and they have a following, and I get all that, right? They're sponsored by different outdoor companies and stuff. And I saw them, and the one that really they all said about the same thing. The one that really stood out to me, she laid it out pretty clear. She goes, look, I'm listening to the NRA. I'm listening to the NRA talk they had the National NRA Convention, right, or whatever it was. And it was after they got a lot of heat for having that after the school shootings. But they're like, the NRA is saying, don't take our rifles, and it's not the rifle. We use them for hunting. We use them for this. We use them for all kinds of stuff. And these women are coming out right now, and they're saying, we don't want the NRA to use us like that, because we don't use these for hunting. We don't need this. We think the guns should be taken away. We think that firearms should only be used for hunting deer and elk and other big game. So they're getting these people to flip, right? Or flip, or they never were there. They're at least getting them to speak up, so they're on their part. They're more of the, who on the left, I'm sure there's some, but who on the left hunts but like hates guns, right? And yet they're getting these women to speak up, these women that are maybe more conservative in their values, right? And to finally speak up and say, enough with the children dying. The NRA needs to quit using us, saying that we're backing these rifles, saying that we're backing handguns, because we're not. I just want to go shoot my deer, elk, or my big game, right? They're freaking FUDs. That's all they are. They're FUDs. They're being used.
They're FUDs, and I also think that they are, they're liberal conversions, right? They get into the culture by chasing a particular guy. They weren't raised in the culture. They didn't understand it. Maybe they moved from somewhere else, and now it's, hey, I can make money on YouTube doing this, and I'm having fun with my man.
Right.
But still don't understand the culture, where it came from. And quite frankly, if the FUDs are out there saying that, they clearly don't understand the purpose of the Second Amendment.
Right.
I mean, that gets missed a lot. The purpose is not for sporting. It's not for hunting. It's not for just keeping the bad guy out of your house. The purpose was to throw off a tyrannical government.
Well, let me bring this up too. So we talked about all different variety of things today, whether it was tin foil hat conspiracies or whatever. But here you go. You have the law enforcement. They were keeping back the parents. Specifically, you hear the stories about the mothers, right? The mother that ran in on her own and got her kids, fought with police officers, ran in, did that. You see the videos on TikTok, on social media, of the moms, screaming and crying and say, if they're your kids, you'd go in and get them, fighting with law enforcement. And then all of a sudden you get these mothers now speaking out, even if, can't have these firearms. You're murdering our kids. And it's a horrible thing that happens, and everyone's going to feel sad about it. Men, fathers, women, mothers, that kind of thing. But it's like, did they keep the parents back and but make it so the moms had to fight and the moms had to get passionate so they could get more people on their side? Do you follow me?
Yeah. I mean, there is definitely a possibility about that. And my question is, and we should all care about the loss of children. Mm-hmm. I have 7 kids. I would be devastated to lose any one of them. Mm-hmm. I had an incident where I thought I lost one once, and I nearly drove a guy into the river thinking he ran off with my kid.
Right.
But where is the outrage for the 400,000 children in just the United States that go missing every single year?
Right.
400,000.
If they can't use them as pawns, they don't care about them.
That's right. What the folks that are out there that are obviously emotional about this, and you need to be emotional about children being killed, their emotions are being steered and directed for a political narrative. Mm-hmm. And people need to realize that. We need to look at the elected officials that we got and ask the question, why are you steering towards this? Why do you keep pushing something that we know is not going to help? It makes no common sense whatsoever. that you've told us this story 1,000 times and it never works. Yet you're forgetting about all of those children that just disappear.
Right.
You know, you see the folks that come across the border. We don't, what is it, 40 to 45% of them are unaccompanied minors. They come into the U.S. Where do they go? Nobody knows.
Right.
Where do these kids go? You know, I mean, do we not care about those kids too? You know, the vast majority of these kids at this school that were murdered and taken out were of Hispanic background and taken out by another Hispanic man or nut job, right? So, you know, they're not going to push that. They're pushing the racism narrative for a short bit about, you know, the Hispanic kids getting shot down there, but they're not talking about who the shooter was.
Yeah.
Why are we being steered like that? These are questions that everybody needs to be asking themselves seriously, and they need to start asking the public officials. Look deep.
They get way more mileage off of 14. How many kids was it?
19.
19. They get way more mileage off of 19 kids killed in a classroom with an AR-15 rifle than they do all the kids that are missing.
Yeah.
It's a sad truth.
Yeah. It's terrible. How many kids are molested and hurt and turned out into the sex trade by the official, the CPS, where they're putting these kids in homes that they're not safe in, they're not checked in. And these people, the ones that do the damage to these kids, well, they're thoroughly background checked. How well did that work out for those kids?
Right. Oh, yeah.
They don't care. None of them care. And I dare to say this, it's both Republican and Democrat. There are some good ones. Don't get me wrong. There are good politicians trying to do the right things, but our Dan Crenshaws of the world, that guy go smoke a pole.
Yeah.
Marco Rubio, good. What is it? Mitch McConnell, and everybody knows Pelosi, Schumer, and all the rest.
Yeah, that FBI agent that was on Discord. I'm sure he was vetted real well too.
Oh yeah,
and he caused all kinds of damage. It sounds like,
no doubt,
or let it happen.
And all those agents that had set up the those folks for was it Gretchen Whitmer? I think her name was.
Yeah,
am I wrong on that?
Yeah.
Those guys went through federal background checks. I mean, FBI agent, if you want to become an FBI agent, they interview like 6 generations of your family to get in there.
Right.
Something wrong.
We got to make sure you're in the game. So, well, hey, I really appreciate you stopping by again. I think we went pretty deep, and I like it because I think it needed to be discussed, and I always love your take on things because you look at stuff different, and I like that. It's refreshing. Unfortunately, years ago, before I was doing the gun, a long time ago, actually, before I was doing the whole gun thing, before I was doing the whole podcast thing, I would just totally get buried and absorb into all this political stuff. I listened to, there wasn't a moment of my awake time that I wasn't listening to some kind of political talk radio show or anything like that. And I had to just back off for a while, and I've never really gone all the way back. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
I just had to focus on something else at one point. And so it's good that I have friends like you that can kind of let me know what's going on. Not that I'm totally disconnected, but sometimes you ask me, did you hear about that? And I'm like, huh?
But I think the only way I can manage it is to stay focused on one or two things, because looking at the massive movement of missing pieces, if you were to take conspiracy theories and web them all together, and they go, well, that's so big, there's no way that's all together. I'm a big guy of faith, right?
Right.
There's only one master left on the earth that can put all that together with his minions, and he's running the show down here right now.
Right.
In the end, he loses, and he knows it, but he's going to take as many of us with him as he can.
If I hadn't changed my ways and backed off the podcast by now, I would be living in a cave somewhere with my family. I would have a really long beard and probably be wearing a loincloth of some sort.
A door made of cedar branches or something.
Man, dude, whatever works. I was at one point I was Mr. Survival. So anyhow, thanks for coming. I do appreciate it. Thanks for listening to the podcast, for all the listeners that we have. If you want to share this on your social media, you sure can. This was another fantastic episode, so I hope you guys find it as intriguing as I did. You can call in, you can comment, get a hold of me. Maybe we'll get you on the podcast. I know I've been talking to some people that actually want to come on the podcast, but we keep having these news, and I just keep having to push things. I do plan these out occasionally, and I do have a schedule in my head. That's usually where it ends, but it is in my head, and I'll get to those people that want to get on that have reached out to me. But you can always call me. You can always text me, area code 620-794-6223. That's area code 620-794-6223. Until then, everyone have a great week. Hopefully, I'll jump back on here this next weekend, and I pray that we don't have to get on here and talk about this stuff again. I hope that there's nothing that happens within the next week. So until then, everyone have a good week and stay safe. Bye.